What's up, guys? So one of the things George R.R. Martin has said was when he created the world of ice and fire, he was strongly inspired by real-life history and events. So today I wanted to take a look at the continent of Westeros and try to find some of its historical inspirations. And we find when we look at Westeros, it's highly inspired by the British Isles, so much so that you can correlate many of its regions to real-life places. So I wanted to take some time and go over these and explore the similarities of Westeros and Great Britain. So starting with physical geography, we find the two islands are very similar. They're both oriented on a north-south axis. They have similar shapes. And if we look carefully, we can find some specific features and see they exist for both islands. So just to give one example, we find that the nation of Dorne on the southern coast looks a lot like the peninsula of Cornwall. So much so that it looks just like Cornwall has been turned around and is facing the opposite direction. So Cornwall is a very defining feature of Great Britain, and finding the same sort of peninsula for Westeros makes the two islands look very similar. I think it's also interesting that Dorne and Cornwall have an ORN as a core part of their names, which suggests another connection between the two regions. Another region we can look at is the VALE, a rocky and mountainous region of Westeros, and compare it with Wales, a similarly mountainous region of Great Britain. And we see that both the VALE and Wales protrude out of a central continent. We also see that the VALE has been turned around, so it's facing eastward unlike Wales. We also see that both the VALE and Wales share the same core of letters, ALE, in both of their names, so this suggests that they could be related. If we look at two of the major houses in Westeros, the Starks and Lannisters, we find that they occupy geographic regions that roughly correspond to the cities of York and Lancaster. This isn't an exact correspondence, but I think it's close enough. And one of the things George R.R. Martin has said was when he created the world for Game of Thrones, he was heavily inspired by the story of the War of the Roses, and based the Starks and Lannisters on the houses of York and Lancaster, respectively. Another connection we can make is to look at the Riverlands, and draw a connection there with the major rivers in England. We also see that in the Crown Lands, King's Landing is located on a major river, just like London is on the River Thames in England. Both also exist in the more southern part of the country, where most of the population lives. Because they're both on major navigable rivers, that helps them to serve as the commercial and political centers they are. If we look at the north, we find that it is supposed to be culturally very different from the rest of Westeros. Its people are hardier, they live in a harsher climate. The north is more sparsely inhabited, and they function more based on tradition and a clan system than the rest of Westeros. So what I think the North is supposed to be based on is Scotland, and many of the traits that you see applied to the Northerners would work if they were Scottish as well. So many of the things that I just said, the fact that they're hardier, the climate is different, the clan system, these are things that suggest a connection to Scotland. So there is an important feature that is shared by both Westeros and Great Britain, and that is the Wall. So the Wall is manned by the Night's Watch, and its purpose is to protect Westeros from the wildlings and the mysterious invaders who exist to the north. And the Wall in Ice and Fire is based on a real-life wall in Great Britain, which is called Hadrian's Wall and exists on the border of Scotland and England. So Hadrian's Wall is named after Emperor Hadrian, and it comes basically from the time of the Roman Empire. So in antiquity, England was controlled by the Romans, but Scotland wasn't. So the inhabitants of Scotland, the Picts and Gaels, would send raiding parties south looking for plunder. So the Romans ended up building a wall to make their frontier easier to defend. So if you want to think of it in this way, the wildlings are supposed to be like the pagan Picts, and the frontier beyond the wall symbolizes that there is this untamed land which exists to the north. Another place we can look at is the Iron Islands, and they're inspired by the story of the Vikings. So the Vikings were famous raiders, and they were known for looting and establishing settlements on different places in the British Isles. And there's actually one point in the history of Ice and Fire when the king of the Iron Islands, King Harrenhal, takes a region of Westeros for himself, the Riverlands, and makes it his kingdom. And I think this is based on, in real life, the story of the Danelaw, when the Danes took over much of central England and established their own kingdom there. So there's one final connection we can make and look at the story of Aegon the Conqueror. So Aegon was the father of the Targaryen dynasty, and in the year 1 AC he crossed the Narrow Sea and conquered all of Westeros. He conquered each of the 7 kingdoms, or forced their kings to bend the knee. And this is based in real life, on the story of William the Conqueror, and you can see the connections. In 1066, William crossed the English Channel and forced his claim to England. He forced all its lords to swear fealty to him. And we see that just like in Aegon's conquest, William's was a watershed moment and changed the culture and politics of the nation he defeated. So these were the major ideas I wanted to go over. And we see that while everything doesn't have a one-to-one correspondence, the island of Westeros is strongly inspired by the real-life British Isles. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you again.